There's a moment most people have felt at least once. You're in a room full of people. Maybe it's a party. Maybe it's a family dinner. Maybe it's just work. An ordinary Tuesday. And everyone around you seems fine. Laughing, talking, belonging. But somewhere inside you, there's this quiet, uncomfortable feeling. Like you're watching it all through glass. Like you're present, but not quite there. You smile. You say the right things. But a part of you is already somewhere else. If you've ever felt that, not once, not twice, but consistently, across years, across places, across people, this video is for you. And I want to start by telling you something that took me a long time to understand. That feeling is not a flaw. It's a frequency. We live in a world obsessed with categories. You're either an introvert, someone who recharges alone, who finds crowds exhausting, or you're an extrovert, someone who lights up in company, who runs on human energy. For decades, that was the whole conversation. And if you didn't fit neatly into either box, you were told to try harder, to open up more, to come out of your shell, to be more present. But what if the shell wasn't the problem? What if you were simply a different kind of mind? In 2023, a psychiatrist named Rami Kaminsky, with over 40 years of clinical experience, published a book called The Gift of Not Belonging. And in it, he described something that doesn't have a mainstream name yet. He called it Otroversion, from the Spanish word otro, meaning other. Not introversion, not extroversion, something else entirely. An Otrovert is someone who doesn't feel a fundamental need to belong to a group. Not because they're broken, not because they're damaged, or traumatized, or just shy, but because their emotional core simply isn't wired around belonging the way most people's is. They can connect deeply, sometimes more deeply than anyone in the room, but they don't need the group to feel complete. And because the world has never had a word for this, these people spent their whole lives thinking something was wrong with them. Let me describe an Otrovert's inner life, not from a textbook, from the inside. You've probably had friendships that felt almost right, close, warm, real, but with this invisible distance, you could never quite close. Not because you didn't care. You cared deeply. But there was always a part of you that remained elsewhere. You've probably been called too much by some people and too quiet by others, sometimes by the same person in the same week. You think differently than the people around you. Not better, not worse, differently. And you've learned to translate yourself constantly, to make your thoughts sound acceptable, to edit out the parts that might confuse people, to perform a version of yourself that fits the room. That's exhausting. And the exhaustion isn't social, the way it is for an introvert. It's existential. It's the tiredness that comes from spending years trying to be something you were never quite built to be. Otroverts aren't people who can't connect. They're people who connect differently, deeper, slower, more selectively. They don't need a tribe. They need resonance. There's a difference. A tribe accepts you because you belong to the group. Resonance happens when another mind genuinely meets yours. Most Otroverts have had maybe 2 or 3 moments of true resonance in their entire lives. And those moments, they remember them forever. Now I want to talk about something uncomfortable. Because so far, this might sound like I'm just describing loneliness, with better vocabulary. And yes, Otroverts do experience loneliness, often deep, chronic loneliness. Not because no one's around, but because the particular kind of connection they need is genuinely rare. But here's what I've come to believe, and what Kaminsky's research points toward. The distance isn't a wound, it's a vantage point. Think about every writer, philosopher, scientist, or artist who ever changed how humanity sees itself. Almost all of them described the same feeling of being slightly outside the world they observed, of watching human behavior with a kind of quiet fascination, of never fully dissolving into the current. That distance, that gap between you and the crowd, is exactly what makes certain kinds of thinking possible. You can't see the shape of a river if you're swimming in it. Otroverts see the river. That's not a consolation prize. That's the actual gift. The problem isn't the way you're wired. The problem is that no one ever told you it was useful. I want to end with something simple. If you watched this far, if something in these words landed, somewhere quiet and familiar, you're not broken. You're not too much, or too little, or too strange. You're an elsewhere mind. And there are more of us than you think. We're just not the loudest ones in the room. This channel exists because I believe the people who feel most like outsiders are often the ones who see most clearly. And I want to build something for those people. Not a self-help program. Not a list of tips for fitting in better. Something more like a conversation between minds that were never quite at home, but found, somehow, that they weren't entirely alone either. If that's you, subscribe. Not because I told you to, but because somewhere in this video, you recognized yourself. And that recognition, that's where everything begins. Next week, I want to ask you a question that might be harder than it sounds. Are you an Otrovert, or just deeply lonely? Because those two things can look identical from the outside, but they come from completely different places. And knowing the difference might be the most important thing you figure out this year. See you then.